Welcome back to the Courage for Life Study Bible, Study of Esther. I'm Ann White, and today we're going to be talking about two wonderful profiles that are located in the Courage for Life Study Bible for Women and the Courage for Life Study Bible for Men. As we've talked about several times, there are 82 inspiring articles of courageous women of faith in the Women's Bible and 82 courageous men of faith articles in the Men's Bible. These stories encourage us to live out our courageous faith as well. So today we're going to be looking at Esther and Mordecai. So let's get started. And what I want us to do today is I want us to put ourselves in Esther's shoes. See if we can imagine being this young girl in a foreign country and being under the circumstances that she's under at the moment. Now, I want to take you back just a little bit of history. And we know that prior to when Esther was around, maybe approximately 100 years before, her people had been taken out of the land of Israel and taken into captivity under Babylonian rule by King Nebuchadnezzar. They were taken over to Babylon and held captive there for 70 years. Now, if you read in 1st and 2nd Chronicles, you can read about Israel's history. At the end of 2nd Chronicles in chapter 36, actually verses 17 through 21, you read about the statement that says they were taken captive into Babylon. But then when you go to verse 22 and on in 2nd Chronicles chapter 36, you'll see that God raised up someone to deliver his people. As a matter of fact, if you go to Jeremiah 29, 10 and 11 and Isaiah 44, 28 through 45, 1, you'll see that God raised up a king by name. He prophesied it through these two prophets hundreds of years prior to it happening, that he called Cyrus to be the one who would set his people free. So let's go back to Esther. Esther's living in Persia. She was actually raised in Persia. She's a young girl. The Israelites had been there for 70 years of captivity, plus then some, once Esther was born. So this is all she knows. This is her homeland. But after the 70 years of captivity, many of the Israelites were able to return home and begin rebuilding their lives. Mordecai chose not to. Esther stayed. Their lives were there. Their friends were there. Their jobs were likely there. Everything was there that they knew, and so they stayed in this pagan country. But we know several things about Esther that we've learned. Number one, she was an orphan. She was being raised by Mordecai. And she was chosen to become one of the chosen ones in the king's harem to possibly replace Queen Vashti, who King Xerxes had banished as queen. What we're going to learn as we continue to study the book of Esther, we're going to see how the Lord has placed her in this position for such a time as this to actually rescue the Jews from being annihilated. But Esther as a person, she's a young girl. Two things. It could have been an honor to have been chosen, or it could have been a very frightening situation. One of the two, either way, she handled it with grace and kindness, respect, and obedience when she was chosen to go into the king's harem and was presented before the king. So in our profile, we read an overview of Esther as a person, and we look at the title of her profile, and it says, Trust God and Live Courageously. Esther had to trust God. No matter what came before her, what circumstances she found herself in, she had to trust that God was in control. So at the bottom of the page, there's a statement about courage, and I think it's a real important one, so I want to read it to you. It says, courage is not the absence of fear or difficulty. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Courage is being willing to pursue God-given opportunities despite our fears or the difficulty of our circumstances. So the question for today with this particular story of Esther is, will we stop making fear-based decisions and live courageously by trusting God? And then what opportunities has God put before you that require you to trust him to work through on your behalf? So I want you to stop and think about that for just a minute. Is God asking you to do something today that's difficult? You might be afraid. You might not know how it's going to turn out. Are you willing to trust him with that and put your yes on the table? I pray that you will. I pray that you'll have the courage to do so. And now let's take a look at the other side of the equation, her cousin Mordecai in the men's Bible. In our story of Mordecai, when we look at him, we see that Mordecai is a leader in a pagan community. It didn't matter that he was a Jew and a faithful Jew, because we'll find out when we get to chapter 6, we're going to find out that he has great faith in the Lord to save his people, regardless of what Esther decides. But we see that he chooses a place of leadership in a pagan community. I'd like to believe that Mordecai thinks he can be a good influence. And so that's our title for our lesson on Mordecai today, is influencing others to do what is right. So not only are we taking opportunities that the Lord puts before us to take on courageous faith lives, but are we influencing others to do the same? That's what Mordecai did. We see that he's a leader in a pagan rule. We see that he's from the tribe of Benjamin in 2nd chapter, verse 5. He's a descendant of Kish and Shimei. These are descendants actually of King Saul, the very first king of Israel. And we all know that King Saul made a lot of mistakes, and his pride and his arrogance lost him the kingdom. God took the kingdom away from King Saul because he went a bad way. But after he gave it to David, God still raised up some of his ancestors down the road. And Mordecai and Esther, who are descendants of King Saul, ended up being able to deliver the entire Jewish population that was in Persia from extinction. We're going to find out all of that, but we're looking at Mordecai. We're looking at his courage, and I want us to focus on him as we look toward the bottom of this article. And I'd love for you to read both of these profiles in full after this lesson. But at the bottom, I want you to really meditate on this challenge. Do you lead those around you to be brave and to use what God has given them to do what is right? How can you help others bravely seek the well-being of others? How can you encourage someone today? So first, under Esther, are you going to be like Esther and embrace your God-given courage for life to do what God's calling you to do? And are you going to be like Mordecai and be a good influence on other people and encourage them to help others and the well-being of others? I hope you'll meditate on both of these today, and I pray that you'll put your yes on the table and let God inspire you to do great things for his will and his glory. Thank you for being with me today. I hope you'll join me again as we continue to study the book of Esther. God bless you and have a great day.